Welcome to My Life. I'm John Ochins, and I have the pleasure of sitting here with Bob Watros in his lovely home in Lake Orion. Bob is a Navy veteran. He's a former trustee of VFW Post 334, where you were a trustee for over 5 years. And he's the park manager of the Lake Orion Veterans Memorial, which is a project that I believe has been going since about 2002. Was that about when
I think the total project's been going longer than that. About 20 years it's been going, but I've only been there since about 2002.
But this is something you're very proud of and very devoted to, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think our whole community is. I think, you know, it's a place to be proud of. It makes you feel good when you go there.
And you're the park manager there right now, so you've got your hands in this right now, and you spend a considerable period of time there every week, don't you?
Yes, there's 2 or 3 of us that stop almost every morning. Don't like to go on weekends. We let the public have it on the weekends, but we're there. If you go by, you'll probably see one of us if the weather's nice.
Sounds like a good gathering place for veterans, huh?
It is, and I think all the stories that are told there may not always end the same way. I think them guys change the end of them stories, you know. So
just to keep you interested, or what? Right. Keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
Tell me, give me a little background on that memorial, how it got started, when you got into it.
Okay, I think there was a board of directors and a chairman, Dr. Joe Master Mateo, if you know that name.
I've heard his name. Yes. The dentist, right?
Yes, and he's been there ever since the beginning. About 20 years now. He's been slugging it out with officials. You know, he had to get permits. He didn't just start building this thing. It took a long time. I guess 2 or 3 years to get the permits to build that.
What was the big issue there? Do you know?
Well, it was on a state highway, I think, and you had to go through a drain system. There was a house there. There was trees there. There was power lines that had to be moved because there was a power line that went right across the back. But a lot of things had to be settled before they was able to even start building, and a drain had to be put in, so it wasn't easy to get it going, and it took a long time. But like when I started, it was mud. There was nothing there yet except they were starting to put the stone walls up that you see, the granites on them walls. And I started there as a cleanup guy in the mud for the stonemasons. And they would throw their cardboard boxes in the mud and get them all muddy, so I had to pick them up, I think, on purpose. No, I'm kidding. But it was awful. The clay was awful. But then it kind of just moved forward from there. After they got the walls up, the stone, there was kind of a lull because there was money. You know, there was no... you had to have money in order to build it.
Sure.
And after they got the walls up, I think it maybe really didn't move too good for a couple of years until they regrouped. And then we'd do one wall, and then we'd do another wall, and there's 3 of them there. And them things, you know, I'm not sure of the money, probably $40,000 a wall. You know, so there was a lot of money to have to raise, and we were in a recession, you know, so... it took a long time to do it, and it was kind of pieced together, but I don't know if you've been up there. It came together really good. It doesn't look like it was pieced together, and you can't tell that it was. But,
it's a beautiful structure, and I'm sure you and a lot of other people are very proud of it.
Yeah, well, like I was telling you earlier, this Joe Zekwich was a World War II veteran. He started that Peacoat up there. And in front of that little monument, there's 47 bricks where a kamikaze airplane hit his aircraft carrier, the USS Lexington, and killed those 47 guys. Well, Joe saw that. He was up in the superstructure of the aircraft carrier, and he saw it happen. So it was always his big dream to honor those guys, and he did. You know, he really did. And if you look at that wall, that granite wall up there of those crosses, it's quite a sight to just sit there and look at. You know.
And you have special ceremonies there several times a year for different things, don't you?
Yeah, and there's 3 or 4, starting with National Day of Prayer in the spring, Memorial Day. Oh, we just had one. I forgot what that was. Veterans Day, we have one. First responders, we just did that one on 11/11. But Veterans Day now, they've taken it because of weather. They've taken that over to the senior center, And Pearl Harbor Day they do up at the post in Oxford because of weather. And we have pretty good attendance at them too, although Pearl Harbor Day we don't have many World War II veterans left. You know, we're losing them pretty fast now.
It's getting tougher and tougher to find those guys.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Ernie Baker's one. He's World War II. And there's a couple other ones, but they're all in their 90s now, so they're not real active. But they do. We get them to come out for that, and they get to tell their story up there, and we set them at a table.
Sure.
Then you can't quiet them down. They just keep on talking, you know, which is good.
You know, it's nice that that project started when it did, so that a few of those guys could have a hand in it and feel proud about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we honor them guys every time we can. We bring attention to them, and they like it. You know, they like it, and we got one tonight at 6:30. A young guy was killed in Vietnam, 1968. But just now getting to putting a brick in for him tonight. So we're going. I don't know how many guys will be there, but there'll be 30 or 40 of us there putting in one little brick. But it's for a veteran that died. You know.
So you're a busy guy in your retirement.
Oh yeah.
What else have you done in your retirement?
Well, I started out volunteering down in Pontiac on Perry Street. Did that a couple years.
What were you volunteering for down there?
Down there, it was called Furniture Resource Center, where they collected furniture for people that needed it. And they were remodeling a building. I was in the construction business, so I went down there to help them do that, and I ended up there 2 years.
Was that in the old Sears store down there? Or?
No, that was in I don't know if you know where Boris Seipel Funeral Home used to be there on Perry. Kind of just kitty corner across from that, and I think that was old Social Security building or something.
Okay, very good.
I think on the corner of Howard Street and Perry Street. But anyway, the work ran out. I didn't like just hanging around there, so this came up. I went to Master Mateo. He was our dentist, and I just wrote him a note, and he sent a bill, and I sent a check back. And if you need any help, call me. Well, heck, he called me right back. You know.
Oh, nice.
I've been there ever since. Yeah.
How nice.
But there's a good board of directors up there, too. They've been there ever since the beginning. I think there's 6 of them all together, and they're a pretty good group. Yeah.
Well, I know you're a newcomer to Lake Orion. You've only lived in this house for, 47 years?
47 years.
But I'm going to tax your memory a little bit. Where were you originally born?
Okay, I was born in Pontiac off Oakland Avenue, out by that viaduct by Telegraph.
Okay, so you're from this general area.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then things happened in World War II. I was born in 1937. By the time the war started, I couldn't remember that, but I do remember the war later on, 1945, the surrender, you know. And
I like to talk to people about their ancestors. Did you ever try and trace your family back at all?
Well, no. My grandpa, who we eventually went and lived with until I was in junior high school, never told anybody where he come from. My grandmother, she was born in a little town of Mansalona, up north by East Jordan and Belair, if you know them towns.
We need to take a little break right now, Bob, but we'll be right back, so stay with us.
All right.
We're back with longtime Lake Orion resident Bob Watros in his lovely home. And Bob, I started to ask you before the break about whether or not you were able to trace your ancestors back, and you said your grandparents didn't really talk about their parents at all, but you said you lived with them. When did you and your siblings move in with them? Okay, that was, I'm going to say about 1946, right after the war, because we were here when the war ended, and then we
thought we were going up to visit them for a week or two, and we ended up staying 5 years with them. And I have 5 brothers and sisters.
And all of you stayed with them?
We all stayed with my grandparents, and it was good for us, and it was good for them.
Yeah.
You can't say enough about my grandma. She was a Christian lady. She made sure we had something to eat and made sure we went to church. That was her 2 things.
Suffice it to say, there were family issues that had to be dealt with back then, and this is how your family dealt with them. And thankfully, it worked out for the best for you and your siblings. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Well, I had 3 sisters and 3 brothers. No. Well, at that time, I had 2 sisters and 3 brothers. And later on, there was another sister, Pam, who lives in Ortonville. She was born, but she's quite a lot younger than all of us. But,
I see.
At that time, there was just the 6 of us.
Tell me about your situation. Was it a farm you were living on? Or?
Well, we lived in a house that belonged to a farmer who had a lot of property up there, and my grandpa did a lot of work for him. Back in them times, we picked potatoes by hand, we picked cucumbers, we picked beans and apples and cherries. This farmer had all of these crops. And all of us, the whole family, cousins that lived up there, would go pick fruit for this farmer. And I don't know what my grandpa got for it. He got the money. We never asked for any money. We never got any money. We never went without anything, but we never had money.
You got your 3 squares a day, and everything was good.
You never even thought about saying, where's my allowance, because there wasn't one.
So I take it you had a few chores to do every now and then?
Well, yeah, and we lived back in the country where there was no electricity. We didn't have water, so we had an outhouse. We had chickens. We had animals to take care of. And we just did it. There was no, I'm not doing it tonight, this other guy can do it, or let your brother do it. You just did it. We brought in firewood. We brought water in every night.
And where was this again?
Well, this was in a little town of Central Lake up in Antrim County, up by Charlevoix, East Jordan, Blair. But it's not a great deal different up there now than it was 60 years ago. Yeah, beautiful country. And it was a good place for us kids to go to school.
Were your grandparents born in this country?
Yeah, mine were. And they were both born, I think my grandfather was born across the Straits. He was an Indian. My grandma was born in Mansalona. And so was my dad, and all his brothers and sisters were born in Mansalona.
So suffice it to say, your family has quite a bit of history in this state.
Yeah, but especially up north, and there's still a lot of family up there.
Because your grandfather would probably have been born when?
Well, he'd be over 100 years old. He died in 1959, right after we got married. Me and my wife's been married 56 years, I think. And he died, and we didn't have enough money to go up north to his funeral at that time, so we couldn't go. But he died at about 50, and that was 56 years ago, so he'd be a little over 100.
Yeah. Tell me about the school you went to, your first school you went to up in that part of the country.
Well, I went to Central Lake School, which was a community school, and there was only one, and it was in town, and the bus picked up what there was at the buses. I remember there was a bus that went by our place, and we all got onto it, all 6 of us. But there was 19 kids in my graduating class up there. And I didn't graduate from there, but I went to school so long that I go to their reunions. And I'll tell you what, out of all them kids that graduated, they went on and did really well for themselves. They got to be lawyers. One is in New York, running some big company there. But coming from this little town, they did really good. But a lot of the boys at that time never finished high school. Up there, they went on to work on the farm, because they were needed. And so they get in junior high school, and that was enough, and they would just quit, go to work on the farm.
Tell me this, when you started grade school, were there several grades in one classroom?
Yes. Yeah, I went to a little down the road to begin with. We used to take the cows down to pasture down by where the school was. And we'd go to school, and I think there was 3 or 4 grades in the same school, and I had a Mrs. Carpenter as a teacher for 3 years in a row. And she was an old widow. Nah, she wasn't even a widow lady. She's an old maid. And she's a good teacher, though. But, yeah, we had the same teacher, and we had just a corner of the schoolroom, the outhouse at the school. There was no restroom, nothing. But they've since tore it down. It was up there until just a couple years ago. A nice old brick schoolhouse, but they just sat there so long it deteriorated and they tore it down.
Now, you were in grade school right around the time that World War II was going full bore.
Yep.
What was going through your mind about that back then?
Well, you know, I can remember selling a tire for a dime, I think, a rubber tire. You couldn't buy tires. Everything was rationed, and I remember my grandma had food stamps. I don't know if food stamps is right. Stamps.
So.
Stamps,
Yeah.
and you had to have stamps to buy gasoline, as I remember. You couldn't just go out and buy things. You had to earn it. You had to need it. If you was a farmer, I think you could get a little more fuel than what a person could get. But I remember, I don't know if you do, war bonds. Do you remember buying the stamps for a dime, I believe? And you'd get 1875 and you'd get a war bond. And all the kids in school would buy stamps on Friday. Maybe only one. But if you'd get $18.75, then you'd get a $25 bond. But I do remember that. I remember Victory Gardens. We just started a Victory Garden up at the memorial because everybody had a little garden and they call it a Victory Garden. And if you had a spot as big as this table, if you could plant a tomato plant, you planted it. People had them in their apartment houses, a box in the window that they planted a vegetable in. Because there was nothing. Farmers were doing other things during the war. It seems kind of unreal to us now, but there wasn't all this stuff that you can go buy. You couldn't buy it during the war. You couldn't buy meat.
I was going to ask you if because you were connected with farming, did that make getting food any easier for you?
Well, my grandpa did a lot of, he'd shoot deer all year round. You know, I remember that. But in the chickens, I remember my grandma selling eggs, you know, that she would sell eggs, and I don't know what she got for them because we never talked about money, but yeah, there wasn't a lot of food, and you could, even at that time, it wasn't grocery stores, supermarkets, you know, that was before supermarkets even. So,
I have to ask you this. Do you know if your grandfather was involved in World War I at all?
no, but I got his registration paper here, and I was looking at it recently. He did have to register, but he never went because he had 13 kids.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they had 13 kids of their own. I had a lot of aunts and uncles. Yep.
Now, did you see much of them? Did they live in that area?
Oh yeah. Yep. And we saw them until they're all gone now. My last uncle died recently, so I have no more uncles or aunts. Yep, yeah. They're all gone.
We're going to take a little break, but we'll be right back with Bob Watros. Back with Bob Watros in Lake Orion. Bob, we were talking about your grade school experiences and your wartime experiences before. In the midst of all that, what did you guys do for fun? I mean, you had how many brothers and sisters?
Well, I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters.
Where were you in that lineup?
I was the oldest one.
Oh, you were the oldest?
Yeah, so I kind of looked after them all. Yep, I did. Even if at my grandma's house, I was a little bit older than I took care of all of them.
What did you guys do for fun back then?
Well, you know, we stayed busy. We played ball. That was about the only thing. I was pretty good at basketball up north. You know, I was on the basketball team and the softball or baseball team, and did good. But we had in the barn, in the hayloft, we had a basketball net. We'd shoot basketball all winter long, and that's what we did. But I got interested in woodworking at school. And I got some shelves here, the one right around the corner there that I made in 1952 for the 4-H. We was active in 4-H. That was another thing that we did. And I've got 3 or 4 things that I made and got A's on them in 4-H. But when I was 13, 14 years old. And I stayed with it my whole life.
Now, was that something that you learned in school somehow, or did your grandfather play a role in that?
We had Mr. Kaiser was the carpenter wood shop teacher, I think they called him. And he took a liking to me and I took a liking to him. And we went and built him a garage up there when I was 14 years old, in the summer. And I was hooked. I've been in woodworking my whole life. You know, that's what I did. Later on, after I got out of the service, I went right back at it again. Yeah. But can I jump ahead a little bit?
Right ahead. Yep.
Then we came down here, and I was probably in the 9th grade. Well, I'd played sports up there. I came down here. I wasn't big enough to compete.
What brought you here?
Well, my mother and dad kind of straightened their lives up and wanted us back. And we all came back and lived with my mother and dad. But
did that go okay?
Yeah, it went okay. I got a job in a Montcalm bowling alley. If you remember that, over on Montcalm and Baldwin, there used to be a bowling alley over there. And I set pins in that bowling alley. I made $9 a day setting pins, which was a lot.
That was okay.
That was okay. Yeah, in 1952, that was pretty good, you know. So, but anyway,
had your folks lived in this area all along?
Yeah, my dad was a general foreman over the truck plant. My mother, and I told this story the other day, was a Rosie the Riveter at Pontiac Motors. And that's where my mother learned to drink, smoke, and swear, was being a Rosie the Riveter. So I don't hold that against them. You know, I really don't. My dad was a good man, except that he got into alcohol, you know. And it wasn't his fault. He tried to quit, and he just couldn't. Just couldn't do it. And we never had any problems with him. It's just that he was hooked, you know.
Was he still dealing with that when you moved back in with them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was his whole life.
So when you came back to this area, you were in high school.
Well, I was in junior high school.
Junior high.
Well, 9th grade, I think.
Okay.
It was, and I went to Lincoln Junior High School off, what is that, Montcalm, over there. And then I went to high school and I just didn't fit. I don't know why, but I didn't fit. And so I joined the Navy. Well, I went down to join the Navy, and the recruiter said, go back and finish school. Well, I was in the 11th grade, and I said, no, I can't. If I can't join the Navy, I'll go down the hall and we'll join the Army. And he said, come on back in here. And so they let me in the Navy at 17. And from then on, that life was good. We had a good Navy career. How's that sound? Yeah.
What seemed to be your issue in high school?
Well, like up north, I played basketball. I was on a basketball team.
Sure.
I come down here, and nothing against black people, but there was black kids at Pontiac Central. They were a lot bigger than I was.
So it was more competitive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was more competitive down here, and them guys were better. They should play, you know.
Sure.
But at that time, there was no way. I tried to run track, couldn't run track. I tried to play basketball, which I really liked, but just couldn't compete, you know.
Now,
football, I don't know, I practiced for one summer, and then when school started the first game, I could see I was never going to play, so I just quit, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you meet your wife when you were in high school, or?
No, I met her after I got out of the Navy.
Okay, so that was later on.
That was later on, yeah. I got a lot of Dear John letters when I was in the Navy before my wife came into the picture. Yeah.
So what year was this that you went into the Navy?
I went into the Navy in the early spring of 1955. So the Korean War was over, but when I went aboard our ship, there was still guys that had served on that ship during the Korean War. So we knew the stories, of what our ship had done during the Korean War.
Was there any particular reason you picked the Navy?
Well, no, other than they're saying join the Navy, see the world, And
Had your father been in the service?
My dad was, now believe it or not, he had 5 kids and he got drafted in World War II.
He did?
Yes, he did. I got his discharge here. He was in Camp Hood, Texas, and the war ended, and they discharged him the next day. I think that was August 7th or 9th or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he got discharged on the 10th or 11th. President Truman signed a discharge for him. He was gone, and he came back home. Yeah.
So he didn't actually.
He didn't see no action, but he could have had
Sure.
the war continued. Had they not
Absolutely.
dropped the atomic bomb, he probably would have been over there.
Right.
Yep. Then he came back and went to work at General Motors. So they called it the Yellow Cab back then. The General Motors truck was called the Yellow Cab.
So tell us about your early experience in the Navy. Where'd you go for basic training?
Well, I went to Great Lakes, and I think in Chicago, and I think most of the guys from this area did. At that time, although I had 2 brothers that followed me, and they went to San Diego. But I went and got out of boot camp, I think, in July or August of '55. They sent me to Pensacola, Florida, to Naval Air Station.
What were you being groomed for?
Well, I thought I was going to be a gunner's mate. They sent me to a Naval Air Station, down at where they train Navy pilots down in Pensacola. And I didn't like it. I never dreamed that I wasn't going aboard ship. And when I graduated from boot camp at Pensacola, Florida, I'd never heard of that place. And there was BTU-4 at Corey Field down there, but I went. And I was there a few weeks, and I thought, nah, I don't like this. So I stopped. What
kind of stuff were they making you do?
Well, we were standing a lot of fire watches. They was trying to teach us to rig parachutes, just stuff that I never dreamed that you would do in the Navy. And so every morning on the way to the hangar, I had to walk by the personnel office, and I went in one morning and I said to the yeoman, I want to put in for a transfer. He said, no. Okay.
This is a good note to leave you in a suspenseful situation.
There you go.
We're going to invite Bob Watros to be back with us for another episode of My Life, so please come back and join us then. Bob Watros in Lake Orion, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time. You're watching OCTV, Oxford Community Television, serving Oxford, Addison Township, and the village of Leonard.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, Canine Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website, dogsaver.org, and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.